All right, this is Branden here with Extreme Networks. We're rebuilding my home lab. We've spun up our VMs, done the setup wizards, and we're going to start setting up Extreme Management. So the initialization setup has been completed, and so we're going to log into the web interface. HTTPS IP address of our server, um, and colon 8443. By default, it will be a 8443 instead of the just a default 443. So it's going to want our license. Again, if this is a customer install, they'll have their entitlement ID that they'll generate a license with on the Extreme portal. But we created one with our internal licensing tool, an eval license here. So I'll just copy and paste this guy. And it'll apply the license. I have seen this take some time, applying the license. And if this is a customer environment where they're, let's say, an existing customer and they're wanting to play around with some of the advanced features and you apply the license, you might want to do a reboot after applying their license. I've seen some things just not fire up just right, so you might reboot after applying that license. So I'm going to use the username password that we set up during the initial wizard and collapse the help here. All right, so we want to discover devices we found. It already found our switch in the lab. If it's not discovering any switches in the environment, you might look here under world and look at some of the discover address ranges. We can add these and add our SNMP credentials. Here's all of our defaults right here. But ZTP went ahead and discovered this switch. You might also look at the firmware and upload the cloud connector. If the switches are running a really old version of the code, they might not have the cloud connector. And that's what we use to discover these devices. So I'm going to go ahead and upload some firmware, and we'll play around with that. So let's see, go to my downloads, and let's see, I'm going to look for my cloud connector within downloads. There it is. Cool. And I'll just upload that. Okay, refresh, and I should have my cloud connector in there. And I might also upload my firmware. Let me go ahead and do that as well. And let's say we want, let's see, we're in 22.4. I don't necessarily want to do an upgrade right now. So let's see, I'll go ahead and put that in there and set it as a reference, and that will upgrade any switch I add into Extreme Management automatically for me, so that it's running the latest code version. We go here and says a reference, so automatically apply those. Cool, nice. All right, so here's our discovered switch. We can manually add, or we can create our ZTP definitions. So let's have some fun here, right? Let's go ahead and do that. And we'll just do it by subnet 0/24. Cool. And we'll just go ahead and select our SNMP profiles that we want to discover with. One of these days I'll figure out how to get rid of this. Okay. Let's see, pop out, maybe I'll get rid of it. We can add our VLAN definition. So let's say we want, to create a guest VLAN whenever we add a switch onto the network. We wanted that to be the same across all our switches, so we'll go ahead and write a guest VLAN. Port templates, if like every switch on our network, we know port 48 is our uplink port. We could define that and automatically configure certain properties for those ports, and we can have it set to automatically configure certain properties like my gateway address, right? We can tell it to use the discovered IP, or we can set a starting IP range. So let's just do that, right? And we'll just use defaults for now. DNS 2.1 and domain name and our NTP server. In the previous video, if you recall, we set it to our wireless controller, so it would be an NTP server, so we'd have something to pull from. And it looks good. I'm going to go ahead and disable spanning tree because I've seen some issues with the spanning tree in certain environments. So we're going to disable that by default. We'll play around with spanning tree later. We also need to make sure that our admin profile is set to SNMP v3 so that we can effectively push out all the settings we need for our policy and NAC functionality. So we'll just go ahead and do discover, and let's see what we find. Okay, discover device, pending edit. You can see it's finding some other things like our NAC appliance. We can go down here to operations and see the progress of our discover. Right. So it's still working, still looking, using SNMP v3. Yep, and we're finding some things, so this is good. If we go back over here to devices, see if it's starting to pull yet. Nope. Okay. Still working. So let's give it a little more time here. All right. It's pulling devices in. Very good, very good. I don't really care about my HP printer here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that guy. All right. So nice. It pulled in our wireless controller. That's great. Management server itself. I'm sure it's going to pull more in here shortly. Let's see. Let's go ahead and collect statistics on this guy. Looks like it had controller information, but we'll go ahead and get client statistics as well. That way we can get some additional details under the wireless tab here. Yeah, we already got an alarm. That's cool. Okay. Nope, stage. Okay, so it's going through the process. It's setting up that that switch for us and adding in there.